If you want to be a great doubles player, then you need to know how to move and how to anticipate what's coming next. That way you can put yourself right in the middle of the easiest shots that your opponents can hit, which makes you much more difficult to beat. Let's talk about exactly how to do that. Here, myself, Kevin, Megan, and Desiree have set up just in an example position with all four of us at the net just to illustrate the movement that's required, and you'll see exactly what we're talking about here. So let's just say that in this pretend point, Kevin hits a big angle that pulls me way off the court. From this position, what are the most open and available and obvious chunks of court that I could possibly target if neither Kevin or Megan do anything? They just kind of stand there and cover their own half of the court. Well, the two biggest chunks are either directly in front of me, down the line to Megan's left, or I could try to thread the needle between Kevin and Megan, but if they just put their rackets out towards the middle, most of that is actually pretty closed down. So the biggest, widest open section of court for me to hit is just right in front of me, right to Megan's left. So if Megan is thinking one shot ahead in the point before I get to the ball, as she sees me leaving the court in order to get to this shot, what she's going to do is proactively move to her left because she knows there's about to be a big wide open chunk of court down the line to her left. If Kevin doesn't do anything, then now I've got a huge open chunk of court in between Kevin and Megan. So if he is also thinking one shot ahead, then he'll slide with her as he sees me leaving the court to get to that big angle that he hit. And finally, if Desiree doesn't do anything, and she's not thinking ahead at all either, then Kevin and Megan both have a massive opportunity between the two of us. So if she's thinking two shots ahead, she will also shift in the same direction that I did to do her best to be helpful and plug up the biggest chunk of court that's available, which is the middle of the court, which is the last place you ever want to leave open in doubles. So now maybe you're thinking to yourself, well, Kevin just left the angle open. And you're right, he did. Guess what? Megan and Kevin can't possibly cover the entire court all of the time. It's 1,400 square feet of real estate. And so what Kevin and Megan have done have covered the biggest, most obvious chunks of court and left a sliver, that little triangle on the sharp angle. And throughout the course of the match, if they find out that that's my specialty and I'm great at it, then they might do something different than this. But you should always start by covering the easiest targets first. And right in front of me and down the middle were definitely the two easier targets than the sharp angle cutting it back the other way. So just for the sake of illustration here, let's say that I do attempt to cut the ball back the other way. I go for a big sharp angle. Kevin has to go out to his right to get the ball. Now everything reverses and goes back the other way. If Desiree is thinking a shot ahead and she sees Kevin scrambling out to his right, then she'll shift over to make sure that there's not a huge open chunk of court to her left. And if I'm thinking ahead and I see Desiree moving over to cover that chunk right in front of Kevin, then I'll shift over to the left. And if Megan is thinking two shots ahead, she doesn't want to leave a big chunk open on her half of the court, then she'll shift over with Kevin as well. So now all four of us have moved back in the other direction, and we've followed the ball over across to the right. We call this right to left movement lateral shading, meaning you're moving lateral to the net. And a great drill to practice this is simply have one side of the court on a court of four hit everything cross courts in the short court. Just hit soft and controlled and relaxed. You really just bump the ball back and forth, while the other side of the court hits everything down the line. And the result is this figure eight pattern like you see us creating right here. And you'll notice all four of us shifting with the ball. And so when you're at the net and doubles, this is the kind of movement you should be doing in order to close down big, obvious, open chunks of court that your opponents can hit to. You should always be thinking one shot ahead and proactively moving yourself before the next ball is hit. So what about moving up and back? We call this vertical shading, and it's just as important as lateral shading, moving right and left when you're at the net as a doubles player. So we've set up here in a one up, one back formation, which is pretty standard for most doubles players. And Kevin is going to hit a first shot of a pretend point here, cross court, to Desiree, to the other net player. Now, if Megan does her job and she realizes that I am not going to cut off the ball and poach, then what she should be doing is closing forwards with the ball to be pressuring the other baseline player. By closing forwards, she maximizes her chances of cutting off the next shot. If I don't do anything, if I just stand there like a good little doubles player and cover my side of the court, then I'm leaving a gigantic hole between myself and Desiree. So if Desiree does not get the ball past Megan, Megan has a wide open target between the two of us, which is the last thing we want. An easy, wide open target and the easiest section of court for her to hit to. So when the ball goes back to my partner back on the baseline, if I'm thinking 1 or 2 shots ahead, then I want to actually proactively shift back and close up that big opening between myself and my partner, leaving Megan with, yes, she's going to have an open space someplace to hit. We'd much rather leave her that sharp angle than leave the middle of the court wide open for her to hit to. So now Desiree and I are in a good position to defend in case Megan does cut off the ball. If, on the other hand, Desiree successfully hits it past Megan and gets it cross-court to the other baseline player, if I'm thinking a shot ahead and I realize that the ball has gone back to the other defensive player, I'm going to close forwards and do the best I can to cut off the next shot from Kevin. And that means that Megan, if she doesn't do anything and she just stays in her offensive position close to the net, she's leaving me a huge chunk of court open right through the middle of the court, the easiest possible spot for me to target. So if she's thinking 2 shots ahead, she'll slide back and plug up that middle and leave me a sharp angle as the available court to try to aim for. So during a real-time exchange of the 2 baseline players, as they hit back and forth and try to avoid the net players, this is what movement should look like from the net player. Now, what we're not incorporating here is poaching. We're actually going to be talking about that in the video right after this one. But this is what Megan and I should be doing proactively to dynamically shift ourselves from a defensive position to plug up the middle of the court and defend against the other net player, and then transition smoothly into an offensive position back and forth from defense to offense. If you're ready to take the next step and be even more aggressive up in that net position, which I highly recommend you do, click on the video on the screen right now, and we'll show you how to be even more proactive and poach and make those baseline players super uncomfortable.